Thank you. Hey, everybody. My name is Emily Ward. You can call me Emily. You're not my student, so it's okay. I teach over at the School of Nursing. I'm an instructor over there, and one of my absolute favorite things is traveling. I have a husband. I have two beautiful sons that are dogs, and I love them, but I find what really, truly brings me happiness is not being in Arkansas, right? So actually, I have a part-time job. I work as a travel agent as well. So my colleague usually does this presentation, but she asked me if I'd like to come over and try it this year. So I was excited to come over and get to talk to y'all a little bit. A lot of what we're talking about today is kind of stuff that you probably already know. It's just like reminders. And then it's giving you an opportunity to ask me any kinds of questions that you can think of, and then to get you all together so you can talk to Natalie as well. So who has never been out of the country before? Okay, a lot of you. Are you feeling nervous or excited? Both. Both. Hopefully mostly both, right? Either both or excited. It should be the main two things. Traveling right now is really different than it has been in the past just because of COVID, and it's kind of complicated a lot of things that used to be not a big deal. And we'll talk about some of the requirements and how every place is a little bit different. The further that we get in, and then a lot of stuff we'll just talk about is how are you going to keep yourself safe and healthy while you're abroad. Where is everyone going? Just name off some places you're going. Italy. Okay, who's going to Italy? Awesome. Where else? France. Anybody else going to France? All right, you're a loner. That's okay. Who else? Where else are y'all going? England, Ireland. Awesome. Beautiful. So there's a lot of different places you're going, and what you'll find as you start to actually get closer to when you're leaving is every place kind of requires something different. So my number one thing is to make sure that you guys are checking really frequently to make sure requirements haven't changed to actually get into the country. And we'll talk about that a little further along too. But what we're going to start with here is generally what are we going to do before we go somewhere? So who is starting to kind of prepare for their trip? Anyone started to prepare a little bit? So what are some things that you're doing to prepare? You don't mind telling me. Saving money. What was the other one?
Packing list.
Packing list. When do you go?
June.
Okay, that's 2 months. That's early, but still, it's good. It's better to be early than late, right? What else? Anybody else doing anything different? Okay, perfect. Learning languages, awesome. So those are all things that it's pretty easy to know you need to do those things, right? It definitely makes things easier when you can speak the language or at least know general conversation pieces when you're in another country. It makes things a lot easier. But some other things that you may not have really thought about yet is like increasing activity in what you're doing every day. So does anyone here like to hike? Okay, perfect. So has anyone hiked like in Colorado or somewhere with like really high elevation? Okay. So did anybody feel like you felt you're good going in? Okay, you're nodding your head so you know what I'm about to say. So I enjoy hiking and we go on a lot of hikes, but hiking in Arkansas is very different from hiking in Colorado. So I went on a big US trip a couple of years ago and we did a lot of hiking, and one place we went to was Denver or the Rocky Mountains. And if you've ever tried to hike there without pre-preparing, you probably will have that memory in your mind forever. But you have to kind of get your body used to the hiking, because if you can't walk on solid ground here in Arkansas, you're probably gonna have trouble whenever you're really above sea level, right? So we went on this hike and it was like 2 miles, and I was like, that's nothing, I can do that easy. And we almost didn't make it. We got there and I told my husband, you just have to leave me here. It's like, it was nice, it was a good marriage, but I'm not gonna make it back. You just have to say bye to me right now. And it sounds silly, but if you're going to be doing a lot of activity and your body's not used to doing a lot of activity, you need to start conditioning it now. So like start taking some walks. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Walk a mile or two a day, kind of work your way up. If you're going to be doing anything that has a lot of activity going upstairs or hilly places, like get on a treadmill and push the treadmill up to where it's elevated. Really start preparing your body now, because 2 months is a good time to get your body prepared. But if you start doing it 2 weeks before, you're gonna be left at the lake like I was. Okay, that's one thing. Also, be aware of what you can and can't do. So if you have certain physical limitations or physical abilities that make it difficult for you to do certain things, make sure your faculty know, whoever you're going with. Be aware of what you're expected to do when you get there. And if you know you're going to have difficulty with something, just tell someone ahead of time and they can work with you to figure out a different, maybe an alternative. Okay. But if there's no reason to feel embarrassed about that, but if you will feel embarrassed if you suddenly can't do something and you didn't speak up beforehand. So it's better to just kind of lay it out on the line and let your faculty know, hey, I may need help with this, or can you put me somewhere else during this time instead of doing this? Something else that's really helpful that I'm going to be honest, I've never done before, but I probably should. It's called this STEP program. It's the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. It's totally free. If you follow this link at the bottom, it'll take you to this website where you can enter in your hotel information, you can enter in your flight information, and this helps you when you get overseas. The US Embassy can easily locate you because they know exactly where you are. They can also locate you in the instance of a family emergency back at home. They know where to find you and how to locate you. And also, if you have an emergency, you can let them know and they can easily contact your emergency contacts there back in the States. It also sends you, sorry, my voice went out. It also sends you really good information leading up to the trip about what things are looking like there. Are there things you need to be worried about? What do you think the main thing is that they're probably looking at right now? COVID numbers a lot, right? So they're going to inform you about what those look like. And it's also going to let you know if the requirements to get into the country change, because they can change pretty rapidly. So this is a really good program to sign up for. It's totally free. I kind of went through it just to look at it a couple of weeks ago, and it's super easy to fill out what you need to fill out. So this is kind of where we get to the part where it's general stuff you probably know, just making sure that you're healthy. So the number one thing that you can do is make sure you're well hydrated. Has anyone ever been dehydrated before? It's not fun, right? You don't feel good. The last thing you want to do is be dehydrated when you're on a trip abroad or anywhere for that matter. And really the key way to prevent that is keeping up with your intake and your output. So if you're sweating a lot, how many of you are going to a place where it's going to be pretty warm? Okay. So, and you're going to be walking around a lot outside, right? You're going to be doing a lot of outside activities. So if you're going to sweat more, you need to drink more. You need to kind of, whatever you're losing, take it back in. You need to drink at least like 2 to 3 liters of water a day, which kind of differs depending on each person, but that's general. And if you don't drink that much, your body's not going to feel good because you need that water. So if you feel like you're going to be outside a lot one day, preemptively drink a lot or take a bottle of water with you somewhere. Make sure that you're thinking ahead of time too, because not always is water readily available for you, depending on where you are. So think ahead, do I need to bring a water bottle? Do I need to refill up some sort of canteen and take it with me? That way when I get thirsty, I'm not having to run around to find somewhere to get water at. I just had this issue over spring break and we were in Prague, which is the Czech Republic, and I could not find water anywhere. It was really hard to find water. And when we did find it, it was super expensive, really expensive for literally water. Fun fact, beer is cheaper in the Czech Republic than water is. We found that out. So always kind of think ahead and work ahead and make sure you stay really well hydrated. Another thing is most of the countries you're going to probably will be okay, but another thing to be aware of is making sure you're getting filtered water. Countries that we are maybe not used to the filtration system, or sometimes they don't have filtration systems, we might be intaking some things when we're drinking tap water that our body's not used to. So it's really better to ask for filtered water whenever you're at a restaurant or something like that. And also be careful of ice. Why are we careful of ice? What's ice made out of? unfiltered water usually, right? Comes straight from the thing. So you might get filtered water with unfiltered ice cubes, and then as the ice cubes melt, you're still drinking unfiltered water. So basically get used to lukewarm drinks and just be okay with that. Watching what you eat. Who likes to eat? Okay, I figured most people. So I think that's my favorite part of traveling somewhere is trying the different food. But sometimes we have to be careful because again, our bodies aren't used to that type of food. Maybe the spices are different, the meats are cooked differently. The best thing you can do for yourself is make sure that you're eating thoroughly cooked foods. You don't want to, it says up here something about street food. Street food, you can find some wonderful meals on the side of the, not the side of the street, but you know, the little booths that they have up. You can find wonderful meals at these places, but make sure you're watching, like, how are they cooking it? Are they handling it with their bare hands and handing it to all these different people? If you have food allergies, there's a huge risk for like cross-contamination there. It's a lot of things you have to kind of keep in mind. So be extra careful about the food you're selecting and where you're eating it. Fresh fruit, you're going to see that a lot at like markets on the street. Be very careful of getting a piece of fresh fruit and just eating it, because we need to always wash those and vegetables before we eat them, because there's a lot of nasty stuff on there you don't want to eat. So be really mindful of getting like raw fruits and veggies. They're great for you when they're clean. Sleeping and resting. Okay, so what is your like top 5 favorite things in the world taking a nap? Mine is, I love taking a nap, but truth be told, in order to feel perfectly rested, you have to have that REM sleep, and you're only going to get that REM sleep if you get a good consecutive amount of sleep. So you need to focus on getting 7 to 8 hours a night. Otherwise, yeah, you can take all the naps in the world, but if you don't reach that REM, you're never going to feel good. You're not going to feel like you took a nap or had any sleep. So always try to plan enough time for you to get some decent sleep at night. Otherwise, you're going to start to feel really tired and worn down, no matter how many naps that you take. For me, naps are more of a hobby than like actually helping me feel rested. And then this is not anything new, but make sure you're washing your hands. Take hand sanitizer with you. I have shopped at Old Navy like 3 times in the past month, and every time they give me free hand sanitizer. Like, it's easy to find it somewhere. And if you take a small amount with you and just keep it on maybe on your bag or in your pocket, because you might have limited places to also wash your hands. So it's better than at least not doing anything. But make sure you're paying attention. Am I covering my mouth when I cough? Am I touching something and then eating something? Be super careful. The last place you want to get sick is out of the country. So be very mindful, more mindful than you probably are here. Think about like prime 2020 of April, when everyone was like spraying Lysoling down grocery bags and stuff. Be super careful, because you don't want to get sick when you're over there. Plus it kind of ruins your trip, and who wants to do that? The one thing about hand sanitizer though, and washing your hands a lot, what does it tend to do to your hands? It dries them out a lot. So you might want to take some lotion with you too. They do make lotion that has hand sanitizer in it. You can buy that some places. Sometimes that's a good alternative. But if you're going to use hand sanitizer a lot, maybe pack some lotion, hand lotion too. Any questions so far? Another thing, this goes back to when we're talking about you guys over here that raised your hand about being in a really hot environment. Where are you guys going? Again? Okay. Okay, that was y'all. Okay. So Costa Rica, yes, it's very hot. It can be very hot, very muggy, lots of bugs, right? So we want to make sure that we're not getting something called heat exhaustion, which sounds like something made up, but it's a real thing. The way that you avoid this is mainly hydrating. Hydrate and stay cool. So we're already talked about staying really well hydrated, so don't forget about that. But when we're talking about sun exposure, you want to wear like really light, long sleeve clothing if possible. I know it sounds counterintuitive because it's really hot outside, but if you keep the sun off of your skin the most that you can, it really helps for you to keep your body cool. Because if the sun's hitting directly on you at all times, no matter how fast your body works to keep you cooled off and keep you sweating, it's not gonna work. So those long light colored t-shirts or like those dry fit clothes you get for working out or something, those are really great alternatives that will also keep you cool without having a lot of your body exposed to the sun. You also get sunburn really bad doing that. So that helps to prevent sunburn. Sunscreen, apply it a lot. How often do you typically apply sunscreen? You all know?
Every 3 hours.
Exactly. So at least every 2 to 3 hours. Do people actually do that? Not usually. Are they supposed to? Yes. If you go to the beach for any longer than 2 to 3 hours and you don't reapply, do you usually get burned? I do every time. You think I've learned my lesson. But reapplying sunscreen is key, especially if you're not going to wear long sleeves or long pants. Make sure you're putting sunscreen on a lot because that will also help to kind of reflect the sun. What does alcohol and caffeine do to your body? It dehydrates you. So avoid that as much as possible, especially during the day when maybe you're out in the sun. That's going to be very counterintuitive. If you do drink a lot during the day, then make sure you're replenishing with a lot of water. These are the signs and symptoms to look for when you're possibly having heat exhaustion. The number one things are like headache and nausea and vomiting, and it'll progress down to where you're just excessively sweating and you can pass out from it. It can be pretty bad if you don't catch it pretty early on. So the best thing is to prevent it. So drink a lot of water and stay cool. What can you do to keep your head cool? The hats are kind of coming back in style now. Those weird brimmed hats, you know, get some of those weird brimmed hats from like the dads wore to mow the yard in the 80s. Those are kind of a thing. So those are awesome for protecting your scalp. They protect your face, your whatever these are, shoulders. They really help to protect a lot that sunscreen doesn't do a great job of. If you don't wear a hat like that, always make sure that you are applying sunscreen on your scalp because your scalp can get really burned and it's very uncomfortable. So the next section we're talking about is meds. For those of you that have not traveled before, be very careful about the meds that you're taking. Over-the-counter drugs, my rule of thumb is if I take it more than once a month, I might go ahead and pack it just in case. Because the last thing you want to do is get there and not have what you need. These are kind of the most common things that you'll see, like ibuprofen. If you're going to be doing a lot of hiking or a lot of working while you're on these trips, then you're probably going to get kind of sore. So it's good to pack something like that. Things like Imodium, those are going to help if you do eat something that doesn't agree with your stomach. It's better to have it with you than not have it. But be aware when you are packing something like Imodium that you pack the pills and not the liquid because your liquids are limited when you fly on a plane. So just be sure you get a pill form if you bring that. But make sure whatever you do bring, and this goes for over-the-counter or actual prescription medications, you keep it in the original container. So some people take it out and put it in, older people that put their daily meds in a little counter thing. Don't take that because if you're flagged and TSA sees that, they don't know what those drugs are. So always take them in their individual containers. That's especially important for prescription medication. So another thing with prescription medication is if you do have to take something daily, make sure you're looking to see, do I have enough to last? So how long are you guys staying in Costa Rica? 4 to 5 weeks. Okay, that's enough time. You guys going to Italy, how long are you staying? 10 days. Okay, so at least a month we're talking about here, right? So how often are your prescriptions usually filled? Every 30 days, usually. So be super mindful before you leave. Do I have enough to make it? A lot of insurances will approve you for doing a 90-day supply. So you can request that. Your insurance will pay for it. That way you don't have to worry about like running out of meds while you're gone. But if you get there and you get 2 weeks in and you're like, oh crap, I'd have to take that medicine every day and I don't have any more, that's a problem. You're not going to be able to get medication in another country, at least very easily and very quickly. So always make sure you're bringing your daily medications and you have plenty of them. So think about that ahead of time because sometimes it takes a couple of days for pharmacies to refill them, right? So think about that. If you are on any of these medications, like stimulants, pain medications, we talk about pain medications, we're thinking about like controlled pain medications, not like Tylenol, or sedatives or anxiety meds. Typically, these are okay, but you will want to double check with whatever country you're going to make sure that they're okay to take with you. And you can literally, and your faculty can probably help you navigate that if that is something that you're having an issue with. But I emailed somebody, I don't remember who it was, when we went to the Czech Republic. I just sent an email to like there was a government email to ask questions about entry requirements, and they got back to me in 24 hours. So there's always ways for you to also reach out and ask those questions too. Another point, and I'll just use this as an example because we just got back, but when we were in Prague, my husband thought he thought that I packed the ibuprofen. I thought he packed the ibuprofen. So we did not have any ibuprofen, and we needed it about day 2. And there you can't buy ibuprofen without going to a pharmacy. And if you're out of the country, you have to get like an agreement from the physician saying you can get it. You can't just go to Walmart, which there were no Walmarts, but you can't just go to the grocery store and pick up ibuprofen or Tylenol. So, and that's a European country, which you would think would be similar to how our culture is here, but it's really different. So that's why being prepared and bringing what you need ahead of time is super helpful. So alcohol and drugs. Basically what you need to know about this is be very careful. Every country is different on what is legal and what's not legal. So it's better to be safe than to be sorry. Be very careful about consuming any types of drugs or alcohol when you're out of the country also, because a lot of their judicial system is different from ours. So if you do get into trouble and you're put in jail, their jails probably look very different than ours, particularly in places like Costa Rica, because it's not a European type country. They might not have bathrooms, they might not have beds, it might just be a small little cell. A lot of other countries don't have like a jury trial, so it's just one person making a decision based on some information, which, you know, there's a reason that we do have jury trials, so there's multiple decisions and discussions being had. You also, a lot of other countries also don't have pre-trial release, which is bail. So concerns there, I don't think anyone will end up in jail, but I just feel like you need to know before you go, just be careful. Also think about, so she was worried about speaking their language. Is anybody going somewhere that they don't speak their language? Okay, so a lot of you. So once you get there, what if you get put in jail and then you can't communicate with people? A lot of the touristy areas, they're going to have someone that can speak a lot of different languages, but the local jails are probably not going to care about that. So then you have not only the problem of being in jail, but also you can't communicate with the people you're in there with. So just food for thought. Questions so far? If I'm talking too fast, tell me.
Can I say one thing real quick? The only issues, I mean, I've been here 7 years. The only issues we've had that have been serious have been with alcohol on our summer programs. So, you know, drinking and it's hot and you're walking around everywhere may affect you quite differently than if you're in the States and you have a glass of wine over dinner. It may affect you quite differently. And we have an alcohol policy, and your professors should share this with you, but I'm just going to mention it real quick. You're allowed to have one drink with the group if it's planned on the itinerary. So for example, in Italy, I know they usually visit a vineyard and you might try some olive oil, you might try some wine, that's fine, but we limit it to one drink. But what's funny is, I know in England, they'll tell you one drink may be the equivalent to 2 because of what it is. Like if it's a cider, it might be really heavy in the content of alcohol. So even one drink, even though that's the limit, that might not apply to all drinks. They may be more stout and actually count as 2. So just be aware of that, because the alcohol issue has been the only one we've dealt with in summer that's been a real problem. So I think that's important to kind of watch out for each other and help each other when you see someone that maybe isn't doing so well, so that we avoid problems like getting robbed or something, because it's obvious you're not from that place.
Thanks. Yes, speaking of getting robbed, theft protection is extremely important when you are someone who generally people in other countries can tell when you're a tourist, right? There's just something about the way that we're standing or talking, I don't know. They can usually tell. So who all's going to Italy? There's a lot of going to Italy. So it's, and I'm not trying to scare you, but Italy is a pretty well-known place, especially central Rome, for having a really high instance of pickpockets. So that's a really important thing to keep up with. Not that that's the only place that this happens, but it is more likely that you'll see it there. And there's some things that you can do to kind of keep yourself and your belongings protected. The number one thing is don't put things in your back pocket, because when pickpockets come around, where are they going? For your back pocket. This includes your phones. I had a friend of mine who was in Rome last summer and her phone was stolen the first day. So be very, but it was in her back pocket. So I told her, but anyways, that's beside the point. What I typically do, this is for women, they have a lot of anti-theft like crossbody purses. These are good because someone can't run up and snatch it and just leave because it's crossbody, right? Plus you can keep it in front of you and you can keep your phone and your passport and your ID all right there. So you can easily get to it if you need it, but no one else can. Another option for, God bless you, for men, what's really easy and women can as well. They have these and you can purchase them at Walmart or Amazon. They have these pouches that go around your neck that go underneath your shirt. So that way it's really hard for any pickpocket to get underneath your shirt and into something. So it keeps your belongings really safe. And you can get them, I know they have one at Walmart right now for like $15. You can find them cheaper on Amazon. But be mindful of what you're taking with you as well. You probably don't want to take everything with you at all times, because if someone does take your stuff and then you're left with nothing, that's a problem. Make sure you're taking copies of all of your important documents. Like, what are we going to want copies of? Driver's license, passport. There's other things like, what did you have to get in the country? Did you have to have a COVID vaccine? You better have copies of that too, because you're probably going to need it to maybe go somewhere else or maybe even to get back home. Did you have to do a COVID test? Have a copy of that. A lot of things are sent to your email electronically. If you lose your phone, then what are you going to do? So I would recommend having multiple copies and even take pictures of things, and also having the original copies of things as well, just in case. The last thing you want to do is not have those things and need them. It's much easier for you to go to the US Embassy and get another passport to get home if you have a copy of one than it is to just say, sorry, I don't have anything, see what you can do. You know, there's not that many people in America for you to filter through, right? So always bring a lot of copies of things and leave your bling at home. So any big rings or things with diamonds, be careful about bringing that. Number one, you don't want to lose a diamond, even if you don't actually lose the whole ring. You don't want a diamond to come out somewhere. So get some of those like bands that you can wear, something to where if it's something that you really are attached to, you might leave it at home. That just in case. So shoes, it's really important to think about what you're doing that day and what kind of shoes that you're wearing. Flip-flops are the worst shoes ever. I know you can get them for $1 at Old Navy, but they're not good for your feet. And you will be feeling it. Y'all go into Italy and to France, there's cobblestones and things like that. It's not easy to walk on cobblestones with flip-flops. Be mindful of the shoes that you're wearing. Do they have good support? I know they're not super cute, but tennis shoes are probably your best bet. There are some cute tennis shoes you can buy that go with dresses and stuff. Like there's options, ladies. You don't want to be there for a week and then you can barely walk because your feet hurt so bad and you still got 3 weeks left to go. So think about the kind of shoes that you're wearing before you go. And now we get to the fun part. Make sure that if you choose to partake in sexual activities on your trip, that you do so safely. And this goes for here too. Bring protection, bring things like birth control, condoms, anything that you would use here to stay safe. Make sure you have that with you there. And be careful about, here is my idea on this. If you feel uncomfortable in a situation, don't feel bad about being rude or coming across as not a nice person. Get yourself out of that situation. There's no reason for you to be assaulted in any way. Nothing that happens to you is going to be your fault. You don't make the decisions for other people. But there are ways that you can kind of prevent some of those things from happening, or at least try to prevent those things from happening. Number one thing is we talk about alcohol. Alcohol is the number one date rape drug. When we hear date rape drugs, we think about things that you pour in drinks, right? Things that you wear that special nail polish and it turns a different color. But the number one drug for that is alcohol. When you drink alcohol, your inhibitions are lower. You aren't able to make as clear decisions as you would when you are not drinking alcohol. So be extremely careful on how much you drink, which it sounds like they have a good policy for a very good reason. But just be very mindful. I say have a buddy, always use the buddy system when you're going out anywhere. Don't ever go anywhere alone. But assign a buddy to say, okay, if I start getting a little out of hand, or if you start noticing me maybe getting a little too loose, then please tell me so I can kind of reel it back. The last thing you want to do is be caught in a situation that you aren't really sure how to handle because you've had too much alcohol. So be very careful about that. And this goes for men and women. Just be careful. Missed something on this one. See at the bottom it says get vaccinated for Hep A, B, and HPV. What are the vaccines we're mostly talking about now? COVID, right? But there are other vaccines that we worried about back before all of this happened. And that's Hep A and B. Does anyone know what Hep A comes from? Hep A comes from food. So food and water. And it happens mainly in more third world countries, but you can get it from anywhere. I think just a few years ago, was it like Applebee's had might not be Applebee's, somewhere had a big outbreak of Hep A. You can get it from anywhere, but it's more likely to be in other countries besides the US. So that goes back to making sure foods are washed and cleaned, fully cooked, because that's going to help prevent this. And also making sure you're drinking filtered water. That's going to prevent hepatitis A, but you can get a vaccine for it from pretty much any pharmacy. Maybe your physicians may not have it, but they could order you to go get one at a pharmacy, or you can just walk in and ask for one. Hepatitis B, where does Hep B come from? Usually from sexual activity, typically. You can also get it from things like drug use. It's usually bloodborne, so it's blood to blood. So anything that you are having blood into your body from somebody else could make you more likely to get hepatitis B. You can also get a series of vaccines for that. A lot of you may have already done that. And HPV, men and women could get this vaccine. The men are the carriers, so you usually see the women that get it to prevent them from getting the HPV virus. But HPV virus often leads to various types of ovarian cancer. So it's extremely important that you get this really any day in your life, not just when you're traveling. But these are good vaccines to get before you leave. So we all knew we're going to get to this point where we talk about COVID-19, right? The biggest thing I can say is everywhere is different. So make sure you're checking, and I'm sure that your faculty will also be checking because they'll need to know too. Most places are relaxing requirements a little bit now that things are getting better. But as we all know, last summer things were relaxing too, and then they kind of escalated again. So it's always possible things will change. Most countries have some sort of COVID-19 entry requirement. It's either you have vaccination status, and a lot of countries are requiring you to not only have the 2 vaccines, but also the booster. Or you have to have a COVID-19 test that's negative within a day to 3 days of traveling to the country. So you always need to make sure, do I have what I need to go? There's not many countries that have 0 requirements. They usually have one or the other. But to come back to the US right now, you do have to have a negative test within 24 hours of your flight. So unless something changes, then I'm sure they will arrange something for you to come back to the US to get your tests over there, wherever you're at. But some countries may have passenger locator forms you have to fill out before you leave. The airport will ask for these a lot, or you'll have to submit them electronically before you can enter the country. Every place is totally different. So basically, make sure you know what you need. If you're not sure, then always ask your faculty before going, and they will, I'm sure, have a good list of what's required. So that way there's no troubles when you go through. The airports are crazy right now because of all of these requirements. I would say get there very, very early to get on any flights because a lot of people are having to be hand checked. So make sure you have what you need when you need it, and you're being very careful about that. Planes and airports generally are still requiring some sort of mask. So keep masks with you. Take surgical masks. You can take your cloth masks. The plane that we got on required KN95 masks to go to the country that we're going to. So bring all types and keep them with you pretty much at all times because you never know where it's going to require something and where isn't. The mask policy was listed in the Czech Republic 3 days before we got there, but there were still a few places that we went into that said, hey, if you have a mask, can you put it on? So you need to keep it with you in your little crossbody or your little neck thing at all times so you have some sort of option. Some places, especially airports and federal buildings, are still requiring actual surgical masks and not just a cloth mask either. So make sure you're bringing different options, not just one or the other. Make sure, again, we talked about earlier, just keep yourself safe. Like wash your hands a lot. Don't cough on anybody, which you would think would be easy, but some people don't think about it. So just make sure that you're doing things to keep yourself and others safe too. And always be super flexible because things can change in the drop of a hat. Requirements to come back can also change. That's why I always tell you, if let's say you're vaccinated, but you are wherever you're going doesn't require a vaccination card, I would still go ahead and take it, or at least take a copy of it with you, because there have been people that maybe the US changed their requirements and then they're trying to come home and it changed while they're abroad. And keep everything that you think you might need with you. That way you're not blindsided. And be super flexible as far as masks and washing your hands and what places are open and aren't open, because that honestly can change day to day. So I put on here, if there's a possibility you'll need it, just go ahead and bring it, just in case. And I'm an over planner, but it usually doesn't work out in a bad way. So I would suggest you do the same. And as always, it sounds silly, but you are representing us and UCA and just the United States in general. So I have no doubt you'll all be great while you're over there, but just keep in mind who people associate you with, right? So I hope you all have a great time. This was really, I think, the end. Yeah, this is kind of the end of my thing. So I'm happy to answer questions, and then Natalie has some stuff she needs to talk about as well. Any questions? Yeah.
I have my teacher.
Especially when I'm sorry.
Oh, which program are you on?
I'm not
Okay.
allergic, I'm just sure.
So in general, dietary requirements, like your flight will ask that question, make sure you get the right meal. And then if you're going to homestay, which is the fact of Costa Rica, you'll indicate that on your form for the homestay. And then you want to put it on your health form if you haven't already, just so we'll be aware. Especially if there's an allergy, because that's something the faculty are with you, they need to know. So if there's a major change on your health form, you're going to pick one up on the way out. You can either fill it out here and give it to us or bring it by the study board office later. But that would be like a new medication, a new diagnosis, or just something you're not sure if you wrote down. That way we're aware of it.
Any questions from me?
Talk about 24-hour immediate test requirements into the US. So is that from, so I have from my trip, I'm doing an independent study, I have 4 flights, and it's like 50 hours to get back.
Right.
So like, would I be able to get a test in the airport, or is that time when they're like start on your first like sequence of flights?
That's a good question. It's your first flight. So wherever country you're leaving from, that flight is 24 hours. And a lot of airports do have testing there on site, but kind of depending on where you're staying, a lot of hotels have companies that come in and do it. There's a lot of testing centers that are kind of set up like in town to get it done as well. A lot of times they'll send you like a QR code to your phone, so just make sure that you have access to Wi-Fi or something to download it. But it's within 24 hours of that first flight. And I would give yourself some wiggle room just in case it's with that. Yeah.
So the last time I went out, they has test contracts, do we need to buy a like something from Walgreens or something and bring it with us, or will they have something in the back?
So a lot of times with coming back here, and each country going, there's a little different, but coming back to the US, it has to be a visualized test. So you can't just take like, the free ones that they sent us, that they sent people. You can take those, but you have to set up a Zoom call with someone there in the country to watch you administer it yourself. And then they actually say, yes, it was negative, and send you the QR code. So you can do that if you have access to Wi-Fi and things like that, or internet in any way.
We should just probably buy our own here.
You can, or find out if they have another way to do it there.
Well, and I'll say, we'll address that per program, but if you're independent, you're gonna have to figure it out on your own, and I would bring it home, but also plan to book a test before you leave. And like when you get there, ask for advice on how to book it. There'll be lots of options with various price ranges. Real convenient to come where you're at, and like your hotel, that'll be a little bit more expensive maybe than going somewhere. But if you're on a program organized by UCA, like a faculty-led or language immersion, they'll be helping you, giving you information before you leave on what the plan is. The question is, you test positive and the group's coming back and you can't get on reporting. So with independent programs, we'll help you, call us. We'll have an emergency number. Hopefully you have people in country that can help you. But for UCA organized programs with faculty, we have a plan for that. So if it comes down to money, like you're going to have insurance that would reimburse for those charges. So if you have to stay 3 extra days in the hotel, your insurance you'll have to file it, but you'll get reimbursed for meals, and then we help you change the flight ticket. And if you have a COVID test that's positive, from what we just saw recently, the flight is changed. There's no fee associated. There may be a small fee in some cases. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this.